Welcome to Frequency, the New Currency, the podcast where we go inward to change everything. I'm your host, Melissa Watts, founder of Enlightened Pathways Healing Center. I will never thank you for your time because time is elusive. Instead, I thank you deeply for your attention because where attention goes, energy flows. And the fact that your attention is here tells me that your frequency is already shifting. Frequency is the channel you are tuned into. Currency is what flows to you as a result. Now, let's go in. Welcome to Frequency, the New Currency. We talk a lot on this show about frequency, the internal state that drives external results. But what happens when your external world is moving at the speed of a Fortune under 40 career? Today, we are leaning into what it looks like when your frequency focus is so strong, so clear, that you don't just change your own life, you change the frequency of entire organizations and the way they operate. When you tap into your authentic frequency, your voice, your values, and truth, it becomes not a liability, but your greatest currency. Imagine the kind of inner strength it takes to hold your truth in boardrooms that were often not built for you. The person I'm about to bring on has spoken at Davos and Cannes, led culture at Disney, Twitter, and Essence, and through every single room, she has never stopped being exactly who she is, a proud Black American girl from the Bronx. This guest is someone whose frequency I've known longer than she has. You will understand exactly what I mean before this episode is over. God-is Rivera is a trailblazing marketing executive, strategist, and culture architect whose career has taken her to the highest rooms in some of the most powerful organizations in the world. Founder and CEO of God-is Rivera Consulting, she currently serves as Chief Strategy Officer at Burrell Communications. She has previously held roles as VP of Inclusion Marketing at the Walt Disney Company, the first person ever to hold that role, Chief Content Officer at Essence Ventures, and Global Director of Culture and Community at Twitter, also the first person in that role, where she championed Black Twitter and was featured in the Hulu documentary Black Twitter, A People's Story. A Fortune 40 under 40 honoree, Adweek disruptor, inductee of the Bronx Walk of Fame, inductee of the Bronx Walk of Fame, and AA Advertising Hall of Achievement honoree, God-is has spent her career making sure the most marginalized communities are seen, valued, and centered. You can find her at godisrivera.co. Please welcome my guest, God-is Rivera.
Hello, hello, hello. Wow,
Hey,
what an introduction.
well, that's what happens when you do the work. I am so happy and honored to have you. You have really done some remarkable things, and this what this show is about, really taking your power and really pushing it out into the world, and you have really done that. So I am so honored to have you here today.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get into it.
Oh, good, good, good. So we're going to go a little bit off the beaten path for this first question, but
Oh,
I
okay.
just kind of want to know how you feel about this. Your father's music, Children of the Spring, opens every single episode of the show. So before we talk strategy, success, or leadership, what does it mean to you that his frequency lives inside every single transmission we send out into the world?
Wow, what a way to start, man. I think it's so fitting, right? I often say the best parts of my dad lives in me, right? It lives on in me. And so the idea that his frequency lives on in me in everything that I do, so many people that he's touched, it feels so fitting and proper and really poignant and perfect that his music, what he loved the most, and one of the biggest ways that he creatively, emotionally, expressed himself, it's powering something that is a conversation about frequency, about continuing to tap into who you are and what it means to be on a certain wavelength, which is so much of what I learned from him. And so I love it. It means a lot to me. And I'm probably going to get emotional when I hear this episode and hear his music right before my voice, but it makes me so happy. And Dad, I know you're smiling down on all of us from up there where the music continues to play.
Oh, that is awesome. If folks can't tell, we've known each other a long time, and so I've also known your dad. So there were several different musical instruments and sounds and different just different things I wanted to open up these
Mm.
conversations. And I've listened to
Mhm.
many things, and this song I've had for a while, and it came back up, and then that was it. So I'm glad you're proud of it. I'm glad you're
Yes,
proud
very
of it.
much so. And I remember him working on the song, way being much younger. So again, it's just like part of the fabric of who I am and my life. And so it's amazing to hear it continue on.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to dig a little bit into your career, and this question is a three-part question, and
Oh
I'll read it
goodness. Okay,
first,
you're making
and
me
then
work this morning.
yeah. So it's a three-part question. So you have built one of the most remarkable careers in marketing and media of your generation. You have done it as a proud, unapologetic Black American woman from the Bronx. What has been the frequency underneath all of that? What has kept you grounded and whole when the rooms weren't always built for you? And what do you know now at this chapter of your life that you wish you could go back and whisper to your younger self?
Hmm. Oh man, talk about a three-parter. Okay, so the first part of the question is definitely being, unapologetic Black American woman from the boogie down. But what was the frequency that sort of carried me through? Is that sort of,
Yeah, what has been the frequency underneath it all that has really
hmm,
helped you, just carried you through
yeah.
all of these situations, opportunities,
Hmm.
challenges?
You know, it's funny because this has been coming up actually, not this exact question, but I think the way that even the answer that just sort of came to my mind right now, it's been coming up more and more. It was always something that was a part of my life and an actual frequency, which is why it's going to be my answer. But it's interesting that it's been coming up even more because I think there's just a certain clarity around it in where I am in my life now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, my name
Mm.
really just serves as sort of the first chord of my frequency before you even know me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I feel like that, I've always loved my name. My name is God is moi. Um,
Wow.
Middle name, me. In French. And there's a whole story behind it, which I love and tell often about sort of how the name was chosen for me by my own ancestors, my own family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just always felt like it feels very much to me, even as a child, that it was a name that I like. It was the frequency was set for what I could be
Mm.
and become. And I had to
Wow.
just sort of step into it.
Mm.
Right. And so I've always had so much pride around my name, the idea that you don't know who is this person, what will they be like, what is
Mm-hmm.
their story.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was such a gift to be able to have this sort of interest and intrigue and sort of openness, even from some of the folks who you would think would be very closed, to just see what is this person, what could they be, what is my experience going to be. And so I have really taken that to not put any guardrails around the type of energy that I could bring anywhere.
Mm.
Um, and I've been in many situations. My family often says I'm sort of like the movie Slumdog Millionaire. If you've ever seen it, we might talk about that later. This
Yep.
idea that all of these sort of disparate experiences make up exactly what you need when you need it. I think that really absolutely represents my experience, not just in my career, but in my entire life.
Hmm.
And my name has always been a door that I felt was open wherever I wanted to
Wow.
go. And so for me, I just sort of felt like, and I always say when I talk about my name, I always say, it was sort of sent, by my ancestors to my family, my parents, to name me this as a reminder to never forget
Mm.
what I am made up of. And so it feels like not just a reminder, but a responsibility to me. And it has been the frequency that has carried me through every experience in my
Mm.
life, whether it was starting a new school, moving from one state to another, starting a new job, asking for a raise,
Mm.
going and, pitching something that had never been done before in corporate.
Hmm.
And so that to me is just the setting of the frequency of my life. And I think it's absolutely been what has carried me through professionally as well.
Wow, that is really powerful. And I love the fact that you recognize that the frequency was set before you were born.
Mm.
Um,
Yes.
and that is really powerful, really
And I just
powerful.
want to say like major credit to my mom, right? Who
Hmm.
who I think, the stories that we pass down around who we are and how we came to be, no matter what it is, whether there was tension or joy or both, I think having her really recount and that story for me and what it meant for her to receive sort of that ancestral message around it
Hmm.
really made me understand the power in it. It wasn't a fleeting or flippant conversation or something that I heard once. It was sewn into me,
Mm.
and I think that that really matters.
Wow, that's awesome. That is really awesome. So, part two of this
Oh yes,
question.
help me out. Part two.
What has kept
Okay,
you
keep it going.
grounded um, in these rooms that weren't always built for you for a number of reasons? One, because of your color, what you look like, your ethnicity.
Hmm.
Two, because you are, especially when we're these days, right, when we're talking about corporate America, we're talking about power in corporate America. We're not talking about people who look like you. And then you have the fact that, as you say, you have this energetic feel, right, that sort of comes before you. The
Yeah.
resume, the name, the paperwork, right, comes before you before they can even feel your energy. So what has kept you grounded in these type possible challenging situations, knowing that these rooms weren't always built for you?
I as I talk about the story of my name, I cannot leave out, as I say, my ancestors, but one of the people who was profoundly integrated in part of my entire childhood and life and in naming me was my granddad,
Hmm.
Pop Pop, Harold Watts, or Harry Young. Don't get me started. But I think, when I think about my granddad, and the overarching story or the overarching answer really to your question is the people who make up who I am, who poured into me, who will run through my veins, are what kept me grounded.
Mm.
And I think about my papa because what was interesting is growing up with someone like him who was quite complicated, but also so strategic,
Mm.
loving, but also could be really tough to get along with. He could be just as fascinating as he was argumentative, but one thing that he was always was never constrained.
Mm.
And I think watching him move through the world as a young child, I lived with him most of my entire life from coming home from the hospital to being 18, and then a few times in between there as needed. um, as I became a young woman, was that he didn't accept guardrails.
Mm.
He didn't.
Wow.
He didn't accept that he couldn't orchestrate or imagine or envision a reality that he wanted to see.
Mm.
And so I think, you know, for me, that was a huge part of the way that I took on the world of saying, um, this curiosity and this sort of strategic sense of saying, hey, if this isn't working, what else could we do? And I think we could do this. And then here's how we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that spirit has just always spoken to me. You know, my mother, also his daughter, had a lot of those qualities that she continued to bestow upon me, and also my dad, who we talked about in his own interesting artistic way. That again, you know, nobody is perfect, but it was this idea that you don't just have to accept on its, you know, whatever's being presented to you on its face. There
Mm-hmm.
is a reality that you can carve out for yourself and for others that could
Mm-hmm.
be better, that could be amazing, that could
Mm-hmm.
be something different that nobody ever thought of. And so, you know, and then I will talk about my grandma Elaine, my dad's mom, who also was quite influential on me, where from her I got a really realistic view of the type of constraints that people try to put on Black women,
Mm.
people of color, the this sort of strides and sacrifices that were needed to be made by people in communities like mine to achieve certain you know, certain levels of greatness within a system that tries to constrain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had this amazing sort of experience with people in my family who taught me how I could do more, don't have to accept what is being asked of me or given to me if I think there is better,
Mm-hmm.
but also being really clear about the way and reasons why people might want to try and constrain that so that I could be strategic to work around any of those constrictions. And so I definitely think that when I talk about what kept me grounded, it is certainly my family and what they may have directly and inadvertently shared with me was something that always keeps me grounded.
Wow, that's, as I listen to you talk about the threads that make up who you are and they run through you, it's very interesting. You know, we mentioned a little bit, and we'll get into it a little bit later, the slumdog millionaire analogy. And it seems that this, well, before we do that, I'm going to be,
My third
circle.
part.
Yeah. Before we get to the third part, let's just talk about what when we talk about Slumdog Millionaire. If you can just explain what that means. Some people
Yeah.
may have not seen the movie before, but just talk about
Yes.
that.
Yes. Yes. It's so funny because it is an analogy I use all the time. I've only seen the movie once. It is fantastic. I definitely recommend watching it. I probably need to
Agreed.
do a rewatch, but it essentially it takes place in the country of India, which is of course the use of the word slum dog, which they use to sort of sometimes describe areas that are low income.
Hmm.
And I don't know if anybody, we're telling our age now, right? There was a huge craze around the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which was this game show
Hmm.
that you could go on. Everyday person could be a contestant. And
Hmm.
in the movie, there is a young Indian man who gets an opportunity. All he wants to do is go on the show. He's like, I'm going to make it out of poverty. He's from one of the sort of low caste areas,
Hmm.
and he's trying to make it out and do better. He gets an opportunity to go on this show, and as he answers the questions and is making more and more, you know, to try and get to the prize of $1 million,
Hmm.
he is you see him recount all of these small moments in his life that may have seemed
Hmm.
insignificant at the time that they were happening to him, or even frustrating or even joyous, and they're all what he needed to experience to answer the questions
Hmm.
correctly. And of course he uses all of those experiences to answer the last question correctly and wins the $1 million and completely changes his life. And so it's just such a testament to all of the small moments that I was just talking to some young kids yesterday. I was mentoring for middle school to speak to middle schoolers in the Bronx. And I actually used that sort of metaphor and said it's like a soup, you know, like you're
Hmm.
all of those small experiences, small or large, in your life are like seasoning that go into the soup that make you who you are. And it was just such a beautiful display of it in that movie. And I feel so connected to that experience because there's been so many times that different experiences that I never thought would be connected are the exact thing that I needed to happen or
Mm-hmm.
have, went through to be able to meet a challenge that I was going through in the present time. So that is sort of the Slumdog Millionaire effect. And so shout out to any other Slumdog millionaires out there. If you have that experience like mine, it is really fascinating.
And I love that story because it is a fantastic movie. I love that movie. And
Yes.
such bizarre things happen to him in this
Right.
movie, and
Yep.
some not so nice, you know what I mean? And some really
Yeah.
cool and
Yeah.
some
So
endearing.
true.
And the things that meant so much at the end were things that you would not have thought at all. So they were all so
Yes. It's
connected.
so true. It's so true.
And, and I think about that when I think about the story that you talk about from your frequency being emitted from the ancestors, from the other side, before you even stepped
Mm.
into took your first breath, so to say. And so
Mm.
I think that it is very revealing when someone sort of steps into their frequency, into their power, and accepts it, as opposed to accepting what the world may have tried to give you to say, oh, no, you can't be all of you. Be this over here because that works better for me. And there's a lot of that. And you said, no, you accepted it and you stood in it and you continue to stand in it. And you also are, in your way, a beacon of light to say to others, do the same. You may not be, you may not
Right.
have my Slumdog Millionaire experiences, but whatever those are,
You have yours.
own them, yes. And I
Yep.
know that
Yes.
I would imagine that it has not been, we can laugh about it just as he has, with the $1 million. And he's like, okay, we
Mm-hmm.
won.
Yep.
But I know
Yep.
it hasn't been an easy journey, and there's been some challenges. So with that said, you know part three to this question: what do you know
Mm.
now at this chapter of your
Mm.
life that you wish you can go back and whisper to your younger self? So when you're in the middle of one of those slumdog challenging moments, what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
I think exactly the Slumdog effect, right? I
Mm.
think
Yeah.
there is, that there's something to, I often say to young people or people like just starting their career that I mentor, I draw the most from the worst things that have ever happened to me.
Mm.
Right. And I think, when you're in the middle of the worst thing happening to you or something really unpleasant or even horrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you are so upset that this is happening and you're angry. And at the same time, when something amazing is happening, anybody ever say, don't forget to enjoy your wedding, right? Because it
Mm.
goes by,
Wow.
feels like
Yeah.
5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Something so joyous that you're right. You feel like you're not present in the moment. And so I think what I would say to myself is absolutely sit and absorb
Mm-hmm.
every single thing, every single moment, every single experience, every
Mm.
friend, every season of
Mm-hmm.
your life. Just absorb it because it's all going into this beautiful potion, this beautiful soup, this beautiful
Wow.
sort of, you know, alchemy, I guess, of what you will draw from and what will shape you. And so I think we spend, and I know I used to spend so much time like, if I could just do this and get to the next thing, right? Then I'll be good, and I'm rushing past all of the things that need to happen in that season, right? To try and get
Mm-hmm.
to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would tell myself to just sort of sit and absorb, even if it's tough, even if it's
Right.
hard,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's terrible, and also if it's amazing,
Right.
if it's fantastic, if it's okay and it's just boring, right? All of those things have something that you can draw from them. So I think I would want to just tell myself to be as present as possible
Mm.
and know that even stuff that is hard, it's all going to go into something that's going to be a part of who you are and what you're able to draw from for the rest of your life. And that is a wisdom that is, priceless.
That is so That is just so on point. I mean, that's so on point, and I really believe that. I think the only moment we have is now.
Right.
And so if you're
Right.
not in the now, then where are you as your life is going along on this journey? So I think you're absolutely right. And part of embracing your internal power and part of embracing this this frequency that we talked about is being present now and not the woes of wow, what I missed, what I didn't do, or
Mm-hmm.
what I hope for, what I in the fear of what may not happen, or what that all of that will take care of itself if you sit in your
Right.
power, in your frequency now, and deal with, as you said, whatever is going on. If it's uncomfortable, if it's joyous, if it's sad. And that is the thing that I think, unfortunately, from a society perspective, we are told to
Right.
pretend that these things aren't happening. Or even,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, as you even look around, is a lot of delusional people here because we have a lot of things happening, and then it's easier
Oh
to
yeah.
pretend that it's not than it is
Yeah.
to deal with it.
And I think too, like, I also want to reiterate for anybody that's listening, like, this isn't an easy thing to always do, right? Even knowing what I know now about the
Right,
advice I would give myself then,
right.
it's still sometimes to pull myself, it's hard to pull myself out and say, oh, stop, be present. I get it. I know it. I know you wish that happened or you don't understand why this is happening, but it's all going to be okay. Like, and that's something that I try to keep myself grounded in, but it's not always easy. It is like a
Right.
muscle that you have to keep continuing to work out and flex and stretch, and I still challenge myself with it, but I know that it's ultimately the right way to think about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that leads me to this next question, as we look at your career, and I would, well, safe to say that you are just getting started.
Oh yeah.
You've sat in some of the most powerful, as I mentioned before, powerful tables. You've been to Cannes, you've sat and spoken at Davos. And, when people look at organizations from a corporate perspective, you're talking about Disney, we're talking about Twitter. And,
Hmm.
what does it actually feel like in your body to walk into these rooms fully unapologetically you? What does that feel like? And then has it changed over the years? And so, as a young senior strategist, as now
Hmm.
standing in C-suite, what did it feel like then? And does it feel the same today? And if not, how has that
Hmm.
changed?
Wow. This is crazy to think about. And again, I'm going off of the first things that pop into my mind, right?
Of
Because I want to be
course.
really honest
Mm-hmm.
in what I feel. The first thing that comes to my mind is that it's fun. I love it. I love the fact that I get to go in these spaces and be myself and have fun. One of the I'm a fun person. I've always been sort of all over the place, love to have a good time. And that's the energy that I bring everywhere, whether it's the barbecue or the boardroom. Like that's what I love. Like every sound person I've ever worked with has been like, "You want walk up music? You want what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's have some fun." Like, you know what I mean? If you see pictures of me on red carpets or even in meetings, I'm always bringing the energy of anytime you get an opportunity to make things better, to do something different, to try something new, we you should have this spirit of fun. And I feel like for we had it as children,
Yeah.
it starts to try and get flattened,
Yep.
right? As you move up as an adult. And then especially in these boardrooms that's supposed to be all stiff and serious,
Oh, yeah.
you know, we have fun. And I think that that's important. And it's a part of the really keeping the creativity alive and keeping the hope alive and keeping the energy high for what you want to create. And so I think a lot of times in these spaces, they have been flattened by this invisible expectation of a performance of seriousness. And I think that performance of seriousness is like the gauze or the Oz, if you will, of the Wizard of Oz, of people
Mm-hmm.
wanting to feel like what they do is important and this is why they make so much money and this is why they get to tell other people what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I've never subscribed to that, right? I
Mm.
feel like we can have fun and I can get these jokes off and I'm still your boss and we can still we can still meet those, goals, and we can still move the needle and what we're
Mm-hmm.
doing and run a successful campaign or whatever it is we need to do. And so that's like the first thing that comes to my mind. And I will say, I think it's of course a great question to say, like, over time, right? How has that changed?
Mm-hmm.
I have been in spaces that I wasn't always familiar with. As I mentioned before, I've started at a couple of different schools in my childhood. I've lived in different states. And there were many instances where I had to go somewhere where people didn't sort of know me, or I had to sort of prove myself. And I've always taken that spirit of fun, high
Mm.
energy, um, being just ready to introduce myself and meet other people. I've always done that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even as a young senior strategist, that was the energy I brought to my first client. Now, there definitely was more nervousness, I think, as a young person in this industry, because you've been taught
Right.
that everybody in these big rooms has this thing or knows more or
Mm.
understands more than you do. And you're thinking, okay, when's the rubber going to meet the road? And it might be
Mm-hmm.
something that I haven't experienced or I don't have the answer to. As I got in these rooms and realized nobody has the answer to anything. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everything starts around a round table with people saying, "All right, what should we do?"
Right.
Come up with the best ideas, and
Right.
then we'll refine from there, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think, and again, that's something that sometimes I still have to be like, "Ooh, like I need to," that's what it is. It's just a conversation. It's just a conversation.
Right.
And remind myself, there's no need for nervousness. There's no need to feel insecure. A lot of people talk
Mm-hmm.
about imposter syndrome, and I think, if that's the case, everybody's an imposter, you know.
Yeah.
So if everybody's an imposter, nobody's an imposter,
Exactly. I love that.
right? And so I think, right, that's exactly sort of what's changed for me is I'm going in these rooms and yeah, it's huge companies. I've talked to C-suite from, Bank of America to Walmart to Verizon, Disney, some of the biggest companies, or Microsoft, biggest companies
Mm-hmm.
in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody is just trying to figure it out. And I think
Right.
what I have learned even more recently, after my success, is that I do feel sorry for the folks in those rooms that don't get to have fun, for
Mm.
the folks in that room that are so wrapped in the performance of seriousness,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't get to enjoy or envision what could be. They
Wow.
are just a slave to, or, a victim to, I guess I should say, the idea of performance of what business or profitability or change could be. And
Mm-hmm.
I want us to get out of that. It doesn't have you don't have to be me and go in a room joking, asking about music. That's gonna be
Right.
me. You
Right.
could be shy and quiet and still not be a victim to that performance, right?
Right.
And so I think I want more people to free themselves of the expectation of this performance and really utilize the best parts of themselves. Think about how to create a world or create opportunity or figure out how to solve problems in the way that our most creative selves can do it together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I want to continue to do. So I do that in my own way and try to pave the way for that by going into rooms exactly how I am everywhere else.
So as you were talking, I was really thinking about how infectious you are and how infectious one can be when they own their frequency and unapologetically so. And I love the fact that you mentioned that it doesn't have to be like you. It
Right.
doesn't have to, you don't have to mimic. This is not a mimic
No.
conversation. This is a genuine, authentic, be who you are, own it, love it, and not be afraid of it. And not to say that, when I was growing up, and I'm sure you too, my mom used to say there's a place and time for everything. And so it's not
Hmm.
silly, it's not out of
Right.
character, it's very much
Exactly.
understanding where you are and what you've come to do, and you've done the work. You have the criteria, the understanding, and the intelligence to bring to the table whatever it is that discussion or those decisions have to be. But why do we have to be stiff about it?
Right, right. And I mean, you should be stiff only if you're stiff. Right? Like, let the stiff folks live, you know what I mean? Like, if you're just like a beat bop boot robot and that's how you move through the world, then I think like that's how you should be. But the idea that everybody's like that is not the truth, right? And so that I want to see all the different parts of people, because that's what makes things so great. That's what creates really great solutions, or things that we've never seen before. Is everybody bringing who they really are
Right.
and the best parts of them to work on something collaboratively.
Right. I totally agree. And the proof of that is, you were named by Fortune the 40 under 40. You were on that list. And so it's clear that the external world has clearly received your frequency because you've been on stages, you've had these great titles and accolades. But as you mentioned, you my I want walk up music, or I want to stand in
Every time.
and
Every single
so
time.
that really, part of what this show is about is not just being able to talk the talk. People who come on this show are walking the walk, have walked the walk, and we are here now to talk about it. And so I want people to really understand that as you listen to these stories, as you listen to these truths, right, that you're sharing and other guests will share, that this works. This is real. This is not something that we're reading in the book and we just kind of want those who are listening to say, well, I hope, well, I wish. No,
Right.
this is real, and it is, and it works.
Yes, it does.
It really
Absolutely does.
does. So, we I'm going to get into a little bit of sort of what's going on in the world today, and
Mhm.
we're looking at AI, DEI rollbacks, cultural shifts,
Mhm.
industrial upheavals, like all kinds of things. The world is really in this. I don't like to say bad place. I like to say shifts.
Shifts, yeah.
And what do you, in this time that we talk about authenticity and just your true frequency, how are you handling these shifts? What's your view on the shifts? And what do you see your frequency now doing for or as a part of these shifts?
Mm. Wow, it's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
So much. Huh. So I think, my it's funny because it's like interesting a way that we just answered the last question where I said, if you stiff, be stiff. If you fun, be fun. I think we're getting to a point where we're truly seeing what people are, who what people
Oh, it's
really
okay to use
are.
that what.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Who people are, what organizations are, what systems are. And I think it's sort of like we needed to get to this moment to sort of then decide what is it that we are going to be in this space. We had a lot of ideas around things that we just thought were absolute, right? From government to the role of organizations, the fact that you get a job, you retire, then you know what I mean? You get married, you have kids. There was all these absolutes in society that I think this moment right now has really sort of shaken apart at its core. And so I always say as a strategist, the most exciting opportunity, times of opportunity for me is upheaval,
That's
because
a
it's a
strong
chance to be like,
strategist.
yes, like, oh no, this don't scare me. Like, oh, okay, so government doesn't work like we thought it did. Oh, we can change it. Okay. Nice. Let's do it. What do we want to see? I think the more frustrating part about this, and you alluded to it earlier, is that within that, there's a lot of trauma around the fact that people are now realizing that things that they were told to believe in were the archetype of their lives
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
was not
Say
what
that
they thought it
again.
was.
Say
Well,
that
listen,
again, please.
people are learning that what they were taught to believe in, it was the archetype of their lives, is not what they were taught, right?
Yes.
It is something wholly different. And in some situations, it is the absolute 180 complete opposite
Yep.
of what they were taught. And so, we're looking at, and I'll take it to the corporate world, corporations who used to say, oh yeah, like, we'll employ you, we'll take care of you as long as you are a good worker. And then you go out on the other side and we got you. And now we're just seeing massive layoffs. One person told another rich person that a computer could replace people, and they didn't think twice about what happened to people,
Yep.
And then you're seeing an even deeper ugliness when it comes to this idea of subjugation of communities, yours and mine included, as Black people, especially in America, right? This like perverse glee to try and re-subjugate people because certain groups of people don't know who they are without having dominion over others.
Right.
And so I think what we're seeing now is sort of the ugliness or the beauty of what things really are.
Right.
And so, from corporations to systems, I think it's gonna hurt and feel really uncomfortable for a little bit, right? But also in part of that, it's like having a baby, right? Like it hurts so
Right.
bad, but you're like, man, like if we get to the other side of this, there's gonna be something so incredible that we can decide to pour into, and what that looks like. And that is sort of where I am with it, where I feel like even more than ever, I talked about the power and importance of being in rooms where I continue to bring the energy, I continue to bring the joy. But more importantly than ever, and this is something I've always brought into rooms, is that I bring the truth.
Yeah.
I bring the truth of who I am first, right? That's why I want my Cardi B walk-up music or my
Right.
R&B. Um, but I'm also going to bring the truth of the moment. And I think what's happening is because we're seeing systems that people literally, it's hard for them to even comprehend on a visceral level what a world without these things, or without them being what they thought they were, is.
Right.
There is some delusion and denial around what is happening. And so I feel like it's up to me, again, take it back to being a strategist, to say, absolutely not. Like, we're looking at, this is what we're looking at. This is where we're trying to go. This is the problem we need to solve. That's
Right.
how we think.
Right.
Right. And so if
Right.
you start telling me my inputs are not what I see, that's going to affect the solution I give you. So I
Right.
can't have inputs that are wrong, even if they're scary or
Right.
upsetting or make me so angry. And so, if we're seeing a system that is absolutely targeting Black Americans, we need to call it that.
Right.
If we're seeing corporations who change with the wind, we need to say that.
Right.
If we're seeing people who want to see people suffer because they thought they weren't going to suffer, we need to call them out. And that's my job. And so I think, but part of the role of systems is to make people feel they have no control over the holistic system, right? And so there is this fear around speaking literally the truth around what you see and don't see. There's a literal, an actual sort of silencing in many ways
Right.
of people, whether they're afraid they're going to get laid off or their company, they're afraid the government's going to come after them, which they have for many people. But I just feel like, and the show is called Frequency, if you're staying in the frequency of truth and what you know is right, and then not only right, it's just true.
Right.
The input is the input if you want to get the right output on the other side. We
That's
can't
so
we
true.
can't distort it.
I,
We
I
can't distort it. And so, yeah.
you bring up so many valid points, and I'm so glad you mentioned it. But the first thing among many things is that you said, and my father used to say to me, if you don't see or understand the truth of something, you don't know how to move through it. And
You
so
don't?
all of these, as you mentioned, what I call gaslighting, that's not happening, which we were talking about earlier. How do you, how can you understand how to move through a situation if you're not telling yourself what's really happening? Let's pretend
Right.
that's not happening, or let's
You
do
can't.
this and then right and then say we're doing something else, and it doesn't work that way. So that's golden. And the other thing is that I love that you brought up that these are terrible things happening or beautiful things happening. It You didn't say it exactly that way. I'm paraphrasing, but you alluded to
Hmm.
that it really depends on where you are with your frequency and how you are seeing this as an opportunity to free yourself, right? Or
Right.
as an opportunity to empower yourself, or as an opportunity to stay in the frequency that tells you that you don't have power. And by no
Right.
means am I suggesting, or you suggesting, I can speak for you, I believe, that this is easy. I know that
Oh,
there are
absolutely not. It's
people
the
out
hardest.
there, exactly, that are having some challenges. And these challenges, I feel, are really to shake one loose, as you mentioned, from a frequency or from a belief system that we've all shared, that we
Yes.
thought, oh, well, the government was always going to work like X, or this corporation was going to, Target was always going to support people, or,
Hmm.
Walmart was
Hmm.
always going to, whatever it is.
Right.
It is not that way today. And so now what?
No.
So now
Right.
what?
Now what? Right. And I think that that's the beauty of the moment, right? And
Yes.
so I think it's exactly what you said. It's like we get to choose what now.
Yes. Yes. That's the
Like,
power.
okay, that's what's happening, and that was the structure that we knew, and now that's not the case. So what now? And I think, you know, I talk a lot about, there's a lot of my colleagues and friends who have been affected, family as well, by layoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to that. There's this idea that to tell a human being they're less valuable
Mm-hmm.
because of something that's been built that could create more profit is its own version of, right, like something that is
Mm-hmm.
just a very traumatizing thing to experience. And so there's that layoffs, and then there's also this idea of exercising control over people's livelihood to control what they will or won't do, or what they will or won't challenge, right?
Right.
And so in that, the worst thing is absolutely losing your livelihood. I know a lot of people who have been frantic, who have been had to downgrade their lifestyle or have some really tough moments. I even had moments, as well, as if we've navigated through the last couple of years of the industry I'm in, among others. um, but what's interesting to me is that for so long,
Mm-hmm.
people associated the company they worked for or the work that they did with their entire identity
Mm.
sometimes.
Mm. Mm.
This idea that it was just connected to who they were. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this breach of trust, this shift, shows that we should not be doing that. The
Mm-hmm.
idea of being present and passionate about what we like to do, or the output that we want to put in the world, is something that is, I think, positive.
Right.
But the idea of tying your identity to an entity that could at any moment decide it does care about you or it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
care about you was probably a good lesson learned.
Yeah.
And so, I think about the world that my 14-year-old daughter will grow up in, and I hope that none of her and her friends tie their identity to any organization
Mm-hmm.
unless it's the one they created
Right.
and own.
You.
Right. And so
Yeah.
that's something that I think is an interesting sort of positive output to look at what's happening now.
You and I was going to sort of, I had this question in the back of my mind for later, but since you brought up your 14-year-old daughter, um, and looking at and listening to, excuse me, listening to what you walked into as taking your first breath, the frequency, and that was poured into you by your ancestors. And now I think about you as a mom with all of that, just all of what you've shared. How do you pour into her in? So there are two things. One, you have this strong foundation you yourself stand on. And then the other side of that is now you have these examples that are in the world today that's showing you that more than anything is now is the time to find your frequency and hold on to it, as opposed to having to learn a little bit or go through attaching yourself to organizations or belief systems that can change, or governments, whatever it is that can change at any moment. Now seeing this 14-year-old that's growing up, how do you now utilize what was given to you and now the world that we are in today? And how do you now pour into this 14-year-old?
Well, first, she's the light of my life. The
I
baby
know
girl
she is.
Jordan. She's inspires me every single day. From the first day she got here and before she got here. But I will say, I think, you know how they talk about the idea that it's easier to learn a language when you're young,
Hmm.
and it's much harder to learn a language when you're
Oh
older.
gosh, that's a great point. Yes.
Right. I
Yeah.
look at it like that. Right. And so for many of us who had decades and decades of sort of that same story, the same
Hmm.
architecture of society, of expectations, of what we felt were absolutes. And though there were some shifts in that, of course,
Hmm.
society itself evolves and so forth, but the main structure of it was very similar for a long time,
Hmm.
in contemporary times for sure. And then for many of us in the last, I would say 6 years for sure, it was
Yeah.
like a record scratch. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
wait,
Yep.
one thing is like we could have freedom and we don't have to be attached to our work or a place. And, there's this idea that we could build something different and then we could create our own, there was a record scratch and then
Hmm.
another record scratch,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
In the last few years. I think, for my daughter, one thing is the first thing always that I wanted to pour into her from the moment she got here is the foundation that was poured into me. The idea that whatever world you're existing in, whether I'm here or not,
Mm.
right? You can always envision something else.
Wow.
You can always envision better, more. You
Wow.
don't have to be constrained, right? By Pop Pop speaking through me into her
Mm.
foundation. And so if I felt lucky that I had that as a foundation because there's a
Hmm.
lot of people reeling who were very bought into systems as we knew it and feel
Right.
completely off balance
Right.
that this is happening. But what I will say is that now, with that foundation and being able to sort of try to articulate that systems can change.
Yeah.
Maybe a record scratch might happen. It's
Hmm.
it for her at, when we started having these conversations when she's 5 and 6 and
Hmm.
7 and then, getting to be a teenager, this will feel like a natural part of how you move through the world
Oh, I
by finding
love
your frequency.
that.
Right. And so it's a
Oh,
much easier, like I said, to learn a language as a young
yeah.
person
Yeah.
than to try and be like, I'm gonna do me some Rosetta Stone and take, Spanish and I'm
Yeah.
41 years old. Like it's not saying it can't be done, but
Right.
dadgummit, it's way harder.
Yeah.
So my hope is that the thing that we're all learning to trust and move through will feel very natural
Yeah.
and to her,
That's a great point.
and to many of her peers as well.
Wow. That's a great point. You know, I love that analogy because myself, right, I've tried to learn different things as an adult. I'm one of those where I wish I was bilingual. Not that I can't be bilingual now, but it takes a whole lot more effort today.
Different part of the brain, different level
Yes.
of energy. It's just so different, so
Hmm.
different.
Absolutely. I love that. So, a couple more questions here. We're almost narrowing to the end, and I am so enjoying this
Okay.
conversation. It's just been
Yes, me
wonderful.
too.
So I like to ask all my guests this question, and it's so interesting to see what they come back with. So I'll
Uh-oh.
ask it to you. If
Okay.
you were to describe your frequency in a word or sentence, what would that be right now?
Vibrant.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah,
That's how it feels. It feels vibrant. It feels vibrant
I love
right
that.
now.
Okay. So, two more questions. This one, as we look at, we can feel, right, your vibrancy and the way you speak, and because frequency, part of, well, I'll back up just a second, just as
Hmm.
a note, my decision there are a lot of decisions into having this podcast be audio only in its
Mm.
infancy. And it is
Mm-hmm.
because when you're not looking, you have to listen, and in
Yes.
how each person is bringing through their frequency, whether we are aware of it or not, but to listen as opposed to just watch or see, there's a frequency that is truly being emitted from these conversations. That is the intention. So, in the light of your word vibrancy or vibrant, what are you looking at to bring in to the world from a corporate perspective? What's next? And I know maybe you can't talk about in detail, but just
Yeah.
from an overview, can you talk about injecting your frequency into the current state that where we are today from a corporate perspective?
Yes. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I answered vibrant because it does feel at this moment in corporate society at large, but very much in corporate world,
Mm-hmm.
there's this grayish sort of flattening happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't know if you ever seen the movie Pleasantville.
Oh yeah,
If you
no
remember
color
that
versus
in
color.
Pleasantville, right?
Yep.
There was Pleasantville was about a movie where the town was based in the 50s. It was a fake town, lots going on there, but they were just sort of ho hum, didn't
Mm-hmm.
have any vibrancy in their life, and they were in black and white,
Mm-hmm.
literally. And as people found their own personal vibrancy, they turned color.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, my goal right now is to unapologetically remain steadfast in all of my color.
Mm.
Um, in a corporate world that's trying to turn black and white, or maybe always was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that's been most important to me. And in a more pointed way, there is a lot of talk about AI and machinery and automation and things about
Mm-hmm.
the future.
Yep.
And I have had the distinct, honor and pleasure and specific experience of working in technology. You mentioned my time at Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
which was one of the top tech companies in the world. I was there 4 years from 2018 to 2022. And, getting to see what it means when you are able to think about what are the effects of technology and what are the guardrails around humanity and humans that we want to keep in place.
Mm.
It's no surprise that the end and demise of Twitter was at the hands of someone that fundamentally doesn't believe in the power of
Right.
humanity,
Right.
through their own insecure
Right.
psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think where I am focused now from a corporate perspective is, I think a lot of the people that don't believe in the power of humanity because they're searching for it in themselves,
Mm. Wow.
the
Yeah.
the Elon Musks of the world,
Mm-hmm.
the Mark Andreessens of the world, the Jeff Bezoses and so forth. They are still searching for their own humanity, and that's a journey that only they can go on. But without that, and with so much physical, and soft power, physical power,
Mm-hmm.
they are trying to bend the world, and especially corporate, to that sort of gray structure.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, it is erasing or devaluing the very sort of contributions of humanity. And I say they're devaluing the type of contributions that I explained made me exactly who I am,
Mm.
right? There
Yep.
is no computer program. There is no,
And
there's
will never
nothing. There's no
be.
chat bot.
Yep.
Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Ever and never will be. I
Yep.
don't care, a million years from now, that would have been
Yep.
able to shape me the way my papa did, the way my mother had, my father, my aunt, my nana, my grandma Elaine. It's never going to happen. That's
Right.
just not how it works.
Right.
And so, what I've been focusing on in corporate is really building structures around how we continue to focus on people,
Mm-hmm.
on humanity. And again, I mentioned I spent 4 years in tech. I started my career in social media. I met my husband on social media, y'all,
Mm-hmm.
MySpace back in the day. So my life has been shaped by tech and the evolution of it. I've made money from it. I've had a fantastic career based on technological evolution. Doesn't saying I use Google, I use,
Right,
I
right,
have a smartphone. I'm not anti-tech.
right.
But again, I think there is absolutely an intentional choice that we can make to balance evolution and technology by continuing to champion and elevate and hold sacred the contributions of humans and emotion and
100%.
connection and fallacies and all of this that come with being an imperfect human being. But again, and so that is what I've been focusing on, trying to use my vibrancy for in the corporate space, is to say, look, all of this, race towards more profit and better efficiencies and so forth at the expense of humanity cannot be the way that I want to
Right.
see the world
100%.
built. Right. So
1000%.
that's really that's really where I've been focusing on. And I'm in advertising and marketing. So
Right.
a lot of what we do is the psychology of impulse. How do we get people to
Absolutely.
buy, donate, do?
Right.
So there's a mix of, yeah, okay, I need to understand how do we run campaigns across some of these tech platforms. Do we still want to do that? Are they safe? But to me, the bar should always be the good of and the evolution of humanity,
Right.
not just technology. So that's where my focus has been.
Oh my goodness. And thankfully so. You know, it's like we have like this guiding light because it, the buy-in is, well, let's just go along with it. And the result of that, right? Unconsciously is, yes, let's erase our humanity. Why would you do that? Why? So you're
Right.
absolutely right. And thank goodness that you are in advertising and marketing because you're right. That is where people are getting the understanding of when they look at, okay, well, this is this way, well, that is this way, well, this is, so now you have an opportunity to influence that. And thankfully so. And I appreciate that because if I hear one more person say to me, well, can I use Chat GPT to answer that? I'm going to
Ugh,
scream.
Lord, I'm
I want to
telling
know what
you,
you
you're
think.
gonna scream. You think, and I mean, and this is where the opposite is affecting young people, right?
Yes.
We talked about how they're going to be sort of better off understanding a world in which things shift very early on, but they're not going to be better off understanding a world where thinking is automated
Absolutely.
and, or even connection is, not real. The idea that's, again, chat GPT or any type of AI chat bot is a imitation and performance
Right.
of a human. It is
Right.
not ever going to be a human. And so I really want to, again, and I spent a lot of time talked before about mentoring young teens around critical thinking, around pushing past, you know, being uncomfortable or awkward and being very social, or having a conversation where you need to tell a friend they hurt your feelings, or you need to break up with your first crush. And
Right.
those are the type of
Those are
things that
real
go
things.
into, yes, they go into the soup, right? They go,
Yep.
they are your slumdog
Some
moments.
dog. Shout
And if
out.
you have a life where you were just talking to a computer, you have no slumdog moments. There's going to be something that happens that you try to draw from something. You got to be drawing from an empty well.
Right.
And I
Right.
think
So
that's what
true.
we need to think about when it comes to young people, is that, again, we must champion. Doesn't mean that we have to completely cast aside any technological advancement, but we should always champion human interaction, the arts, the humanities, emotion, connection, risk, the way that humans make them and evolve over anything else. And we should bestow that into our young people. And I see all of AI and its usage in education. It's very troubling for me,
Yeah.
because then young people will not have ever had a chance to have these experiences and know how to think and find their own voice, which is not good.
No, I would 100% agree. And thank you for having the courage, and it is true to your frequency, is to go in and change and spark and stand for things. And so this is so very important. And I worry about the young people today.
Me too.
And not because they do not have the tools in order to be able to change this world and make it something real and honest and beautiful, is that they're being shun away from doing those things and tapping into their frequency. It's like, let me give my power away and tap into the AI. No, that's why this show is born, to talk about the frequency that is in us, the power, the force that we all have. And that is something that I want us all to remember, and especially for the young people.
Yes, I agree completely. And I mean, I'm worried about young people, but I think under the weight of so much that's happening, I'm worried about the elders forgetting to remind the young people that this
Oh,
matters.
yeah. That's, you have to
Right?
come
I
back on
think
the
there's a
show to
lot
talk
of
about that one.
I
Yeah.
seriously,
Yeah.
you know,
That's a big one.
get those get those earphones off those kids' ears.
Yeah.
Have them listen to elders. Make them read books. Make them challenge
Right.
ideas. Like, I think again we've got to find that balance and remember that we can architect the future that we want to see.
Right.
The world, it doesn't just have to just happen to us.
Right.
We can have a hand in it.
100%. 100%. Well, we're at the end, and I one last
Oh
question.
no,
Yeah, I
so much
know.
fun.
Yes. One last question
Okay.
again that I ask everyone who comes on the show, and this is, we want to close on this. So, for a woman who has sat with the global leaders, fought every day to make sure that marginalized voices are not just heard but centered, you know, not heard but really brought to the forefront. What is the single most important thing that you want every person listening to understand about their own frequency? What do you want to give them? What do you want to pour into the audience to help them understand, empower, and connect to their own frequency before we leave today?
I was just thinking about this yesterday. And I guess it sort of coming back to me again today. I think, making it full circle to what I was able to see my family dream up and envision and imagine. And so many of those things that they envisioned came true. And I watched them make it happen. But they made it happen because they believed that it was possible. And I think for me, what I would want to say is that, I is oftentimes, and I see it in people in corporate and young people, that they don't believe their own voice matters or
Wow.
that their own vision is possible. If you don't start with your own belief, then it won't be,
Right.
right?
That's
and
right.
and so to me is just and that is not, I mentioned yesterday I was speaking to middle school students, and I implored upon them that means you right now, a 12-year-old right now, what they envision to be possible when you tap into your own frequency
Right.
doesn't mean that you won't have bumps in the road, doesn't mean that the output or the end result is going to be always what you thought it was going to be, right? But you would have shifted something based on what you believe to be possible and the idea that your thoughts, your feelings, your imagination mattered and your voice. And so, I spent a lot of time. There's a lot of, as I mentioned before, this sort of performance of who gets to be in a room with power. There's also a accepted look of those people,
Right.
right? Of who gets to have power and wield it. And I think what happens to anyone that doesn't look like that, they start to believe they don't have any power, even if,
Yeah.
and so to me, it's like you can't win a race you already feel like you lost.
Right.
And I think for me, it's just this idea, I have always never felt that my current reality is the last reality or the only reality that I had to accept.
Wow.
And that
Yes.
has enabled me to create new ones. You know, I never thought that maybe I couldn't create a new role at an advertising agency like VML,
Right.
at a major company like Twitter,
Right.
that I couldn't, you know, I never put those constraints on myself. And I think people don't realize, they don't even think, they always voice it to themselves in saying that they don't think they look like people who should be or are in power or should have power, or that they may have an idea that could shift everything or just shift their life or someone else's life, or that they might have an opinion that really needs to be heard and is important and matters. And I want people to start with that imagination that they do have all those things. And so I would say to anybody, and again, doesn't mean, I'm not talking about age and 18, you don't have to wait to start that power in yourself.
Wow. That is
Start now.
really amazing, and such a good thing to leave people with, because you're right. It starts with the openness of I can. Yeah, whatever it is. Yes. The answer is yes. I can.
You can.
Yes.
You can. My dad used to always say, it's just paperwork.
Yes. Yes, he did.
Not every idea involves paperwork, but it was a metaphor of, like, he used to say, go until you find an obstacle, then figure out how to get around that obstacle.
Right.
And I think, that has just been such an interesting way to frame everything. And again, it doesn't mean that every single thing you set out to do will happen in the way you thought.
Right.
But what you learn, what you take from, what you do shift, what changes from that effort goes into the next effort, right?
Right.
And it all amounts to something. And so you have to have that belief that it doesn't have to be a constraint.
Yeah.
It could be possible.
Oh, thank you so much. So it's yes, I can and I will.
Yes,
That is
do it.
amazing. So I have to tell you that this we're coming to an end, and it's like, oh, this is so fun. I
Yes,
am
it was.
so. This has been probably one of the most precious and important conversations in my career, in my life. And I'll share with the audience that God-is Rivera is my daughter.
Hey,
And
mama.
and I am so very proud of her. And, this has just been a joy for me as a mom, as a person who has been in corporate for many years, and as a person who has created this show so that I can share all of the positives in the world to keep people knowing that they have the power. Just choose it.
Mhm.
And so this episode has really been an epitome of that on so many levels for me. So thank you so much for coming on. It has been just a joy.
You are so welcome, Ma. I would do anything for you.
Oh,
And I hope as you re-listen or think about many of the things that I said in this specific episode, you think about how much the host of this show, my mom, has poured into me, and how much, so much
oh,
of my success rests at all of the things that she's given me, my entire family, and bestowed into me. And just also want to say, as we talk about shifts in frequency, I'm so proud of my mom for finding her own frequency,
oh,
starting this podcast, having these conversations. She has many of these conversations with so many people who look to her, who she pours into, who she is able to
oh,
be such a steady voice into. And so I'm so proud of her for, again, finding her own frequency. And I think this is a perfect medium for her. And I am more than honored to be one of the guests. I didn't get to be number one, y'all. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't be number one in the call sheet. That's okay. That's okay. We didn't want to come in hot. But I am so appreciative to be part of season one. I'm here. I'm
yes,
here. And I
for
love you.
sure.
I love you.
Oh, I love you too. Thank you so much. Wow, what a show. Thank you for your attention, because where attention goes, energy flows. My intention is simple, that you receive exactly what you need to create your highest currency. Remember this: frequency is your new currency. Your internal state is your greatest power. Wholeness is not lost, it's simply waiting to be remembered. I'm Melissa Watts. This is Frequency, the New Currency. Frequency set, currency in motion, transmission complete. Now go change your world.